Hi everyone, Steve. Welcome to this episode of Monday Morning Musings, where we're going to shift from the survey of Plato's idea about the soul to what the Jewish scriptures said. What Christians call the Old Testament. And by the way, again, I want to apologize if you hear any background HVAC unit hum. It is 100 degrees, 38, 37, 39 Celsius. I'm thankful for the air conditioning, so you just might have to put up with a little bit of background hum from now and then. I am sure that many of you have heard that the Hebrew word for soul is nephesh, N-E-P-H-E-S-H. And that is true. It's a word that's used over 700 times in the 39 books of the Protestant Old Testament. 700 times. Now, I've been to worship seminars and all kinds of seminars where it goes like this. Nephesh is soul and Ruach is spirit. And we want the Ruach of God. And, Ruach relates to the spirit and nephesh relates to the soul, and it's real simple. And so when you read nephesh, you need to understand he's talking about the soul. Once again, we run into what's called the etymological fallacy of making too much of too little based on a word definition without context. Christians do it all the time, and it's a bad habit. I need to tell you, your little strong concordance is not enough to make you a Greek scholar or to let you know here's what the word means. As a matter of fact, sometimes in the Hebrew scriptures, even in the same verse, that word is translated different ways. Now, of the almost 700 references, there are about 300, almost half, 300 where it is not translated as soul. But my pastor said nephesh means soul and ruach is spirit. And in our worship, we want ruach worship, the wind of God. And I'm going to put up a slide right now just as an example of the numerous different ways that word can be translated. It'd take too long to read it, but I'm going to keep it up there for a while. Here's the issue. How can the non-technical English reader, unfamiliar with Hebrew, know what he or she is reading every time that word is used? And you cannot possibly know unless you do a little bit of work. The average English reader would never take the time or the effort to do the study necessary, just gets a hold of the definition of soul and thinks that's just what it is, end of story, that's the Hebrew word for soul. Well, it is, but half the time it's not. So that means what our understanding of what we think soul is might need some adjusting based on the other verses where nephesh is translated in a different way. That's my deep conviction. It's imperative, because otherwise you're just going to make the jump. You're going to think, you read nephesh, you've already been conditioned platonically to think a certain way. So when you see the nephesh, or in the Hebrew scriptures, you're just going to think the Platonic soul. And as you can see from the slide, it's not that clear. In the first chapter of Genesis, we have the first reference to nephesh. And God said, and you're familiar with this, let the waters bring forth, what's it say? Let the water bring forth swarms of nephesh. Swarms of souls? Swarms of living creatures. That's one of the ways this word is translated. A living creature. And I'm going to continue. So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature, nephesh, that moves. Keep that thought about motion in mind. Every living creature that moves. And then the third time you read the word, it's in verse 24 where it's translated creatures again. And its next occurrence in verse 30, the translators have translated it as the breath of life. My point is, don't make too much of too little. And regarding nephesh, it is not equivalent to the Platonic idea of the soul. This pattern of inconsistency that I just touched on in Genesis follows through the entire canon of the Old Testament. The uses vary considerably. And I'll see you next time.